we're seeing that as a bit of a challenge right now. If you want to get what you think is a similar comp to the last number of years, it's not moving. That doesn't mean that the market is crashing, but it does mean that the price that they're wanting, which is the price they might have gotten 2 or 3 years ago, isn't the price they're going to get now. It's just not happening.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Land Development Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Glick. We have an industry news episode for you today, and joining me on these episodes, as always, is Charles Covey. Charles, I've been seeing on your Instagram that you've been traveling somewhere this last week. How was your trip?
Yeah, so I've been hiking in Utah. So I don't know if anybody listening has ever been to Utah, but Zion National Park is really phenomenal. And you got to find the kind of off the beaten path trails to get some peace and quiet because there's a lot of people there, but the views are off the charts. So it's been really cool. Done some hiking, done some climbing, and really enjoyed it.
Nice. Well, I will say a couple of your pictures, or maybe they were videos that you posted. You were high up on the side of a cliff,
Yep.
and I was thinking two thid I was
Yep.
thinking, one, how like you really trust your gear because you're leaning back, and two, you
Sure.
how do you make sure you didn't drop your phone?
Yeah, you definitely don't want to drop the phone. Trusting the gear is really an important element. So there was a whole training session before that. That was with a guide, and so the whole training session beforehand, and trusting the gear and the whole set of anchoring systems that they installed. So that was cool. And yeah, you got to watch the phone. Definitely, they make these little phone holder things that are on a little lanyard, so you don't drop your phone. That's that's a big one.
Nice. Well, before we get into our first article today, I just wanted to make a quick update, and I posted this on our LinkedIn page as well. But for those of you who didn't see that, we have a slight change to our new episode schedule. The first thing to note is that these industry news episodes are now going to be released on Mondays every other week. So same cadence, but we're going to be releasing them on Mondays instead of Tuesdays. And the reason for that is because we are going to be increasing the interview episodes to doing them every week. So every Tuesday, there will be a new interview episode released. And with that, the week in review episodes that we were doing, we're going to discontinue recording those. Basically, there's only so much time to do these different episodes, and we're using the time spent on the week in review to do additional interviews, since that appears to be what you're most interested in compared to additional news. So just a heads up there, you'll be seeing this one. Obviously, you're listening to this on Monday, and then the very next day, you'll have an interview episode. All right. With that said, let's go ahead and get into article number one. And this one comes to us from Redfin. The U.S. housing market has nearly 500,000 more sellers than buyers, the most on record, that will likely cause home prices to fall. So a summary from this article: as of April 2025, there are approximately 1.9 million home sellers and 1.5 million buyers in the U.S., resulting in 34% more sellers than buyers, the largest disparity since Redfin began tracking in 2013. This imbalance indicates a significant shift toward a buyer's market, with 31 of the 50 most populous U.S. metros now favoring buyers. Miami leads with nearly 3 times more sellers than buyers, while Newark, New Jersey remains the strongest sellers market. The condo market is experiencing a pronounced imbalance, with 83% more condo sellers than buyers, compared to a 28% surplus in the single-family home market. Redfin forecasts a 1% decline in home prices by the end of 2025, attributing this to the growing surplus of sellers and reduced buyer demand. And some of the factors that are contributing to buyer hesitation that were noted in the article: high mortgage rates averaging 6.73% in April 2025, elevated home prices with a median sale price at $431,931, and then economic uncertainties, including tariff discussions and job fluctuations. And then continuing on here, many sellers are beginning to adjust expectations, offering concessions or reducing prices to attract buyers. Notably, 44% of home listings in April had been on the market for 60 days or longer, the highest share since 2020. And then some of the regional variances or variations between different markets. So the strongest buyers markets are in Miami, West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Austin, and Jacksonville. And then the most balanced market is St. Louis, and the strongest sellers market, as already mentioned, was Newark, New Jersey. So thoughts on this, Charles?
I don't think this is I don't think this is surprising because we saw this coming and we've talked about this for a while. Probably a correction incoming, probably a correction needed. What's interesting is buyer behavior here and how this is going to trickle down, how this will affect a lot of things. Let's say pre 2022 or pre 2023 even, we had almost what you would consider a liquid asset in a single family home. You could exit this thing in 30 days. So we'll call it semi-liquid. So it wasn't a big deal. If you needed to sell your house, there was somebody out there that wanted to buy it in most cases, unless you had, like a super jumbo type scenario where this is a special custom home. But if it was a more normal type house, you could get rid of these things pretty quickly. If you needed to move, you need to relocate. We're seeing that as a bit of a challenge right now. If you want to get what you think is a similar comp to the last number of years, it's not moving. And so we're seeing a lot of those adjustments happen. I kind of watch some things on Zillow just because I'm always interested in what's going on, and I see a lot of price cuts. Now, that doesn't mean that the market is crashing, but it does mean that the price that they're wanting, which is the price they might have gotten 2 or 3 years ago, isn't the price they're going to get now. It's just not happening. And so we're seeing people have to adjust those expectations and bring prices down. The correction was needed, but I'm really curious how that's going to play out in buyer behavior and what that's going to do to that whole set of inventory, and whether it's going to make people, I would assume it's going to make people stay in an existing home longer because now it's not worth quite what they thought it was. And I think that in general, people think it's not true, but they're going to feel like it's a loss if they sell it under the number they had in their head, which is not true. It's already, it inflated a tremendous amount over, post COVID. So we'll see how that plays out with buyer behavior. This is one that'll be cool for us to watch it play out over a couple of years and see what happens.
Yep. Well, let's go ahead and move along to the next article here. So this one is actually, before we go to the article, I've shifted around from the comment section. So we just have one comment here that I'm going to highlight from some of our posts. And this one comes to us from TikTok. And the user G Hendrix01 says, and this is in response to a video that was pulled from a podcast episode where Aaron Lubeck was on, and he talked about parking requirements. And so the comment reads, "Parking lots make our country unwalkable." And then in response to that, Miles D responds, 100%. The county, I think they mean maybe country, is so large, people in most areas require vehicles, and parking garages cost more than just buying the whole block of houses. So parking lots will continue to be built. And then another response from artist Andy Saputo says, "I'd say it's the weather first. That alone requires cars to keep us from dying of heat or cold. And those cars require parking lots." So kind of interesting. I like to see people commenting on here. It's not always us getting trolled by people. There are some actual conversations about the videos that happen in the comments. What are your thoughts on this, good, Charles? Just parking lots in general. I know there's a lot of action.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with parking lots right now. Parking minimums are an absolute travesty. Like, they're using up enormous swaths of land. We're talking about acres and acres and acres that are completely unnecessary. I mean, when was the last time you went to the grocery store and every parking spot was used?
Right.
Pretty much never, right? And there may be, okay, they're at the mall, they might use all the parking spaces on Black Friday, but outside of that day, when are they all used? It's just not happening. And so there's a lot of ways to be more efficient, and cities are realizing, okay, these parking minimums are a little bit silly. Let's dial this back a little bit and make this more reasonable. So there are some cases, and in fact, I've got a whole map of all these massive parking lots across DFW that I've saved over time that I think would be good development opportunities, because they're, we're talking about 2, 3, 4, 5 acres of, you get a big center, you got 3 or 4 big box stores all together. Now they've all got a parking minimum at each one. None of it's being used. And so we're talking about multiple acres available. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out.
This episode of the Land Development Podcast is brought to you by Groove. Groove lets you look up parcel ownership, overlay key data like floodplains and school districts, and track conversations with landowners all in one place. Start your free trial today at letsgroove.com/signup. That's letsgroov.com/signup. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, well, let's get on to the second article here, and this one comes to us from the Texas Tribune. Texas bill allowing smaller homes on smaller lots amid housing affordability crunch advances in-house. So this is a bill that we have talked about in the past, so this is a quick update on where this one is currently at. The Texas House passed Senate Bill 15 with an 86-43 vote. The bill is designed to allow smaller homes on smaller lots in large Texas cities to help improve housing affordability. SB 15 originally would have blocked large cities from requiring single-family homes in new subdivisions to be on more than 1,400 square feet of land. However, State Rep. Gary Gates amended the bill to raise the minimum lot size to 3,000 square feet, up from the originally proposed 1,400 square feet. The bill applies only to new subdivisions of at least 5 acres in cities with populations over 150,000 in counties with more than 300,000 residents. It does not apply to existing neighborhoods or areas with restrictive covenants or HOA rules. An amendment by Rep. Ramon Romero requires cities to establish a new zoning category to apply the bill. It won't override existing single-family zoning. Supporters argue the bill could make it easier to build affordable homes and help address the housing shortage. Opponents say it limits local control and question whether it will actually lower housing costs. Next steps on this bill, the Senate must either approve the House's amendments or form a conference committee to resolve differences between the chambers. Thoughts on this, Charles?
I love this one. I've been tracking this one for a little while. And yes, it limits the local control, which is the point. That's the whole idea here. Uh, we want to let the free market system be able to do what it does, and the free market system is saying we desperately need to release the iron grip of some of these regulations that are antiquated and keeping us from being able to deliver what the market wants, which is more affordable housing and at volume. So this does solve a lot of problems. It's not a single, this single bill doesn't solve everything, of course, but it does solve a particular issue where it makes it very difficult. Now you can get PD zoning and you can go on a case by case basis and go to a city and try to get projects of lots of this size done. It can be done, but it's challenging. And if they decide they don't like you or they don't like the project, then it's an uphill battle that's probably not worth fighting. This frees that up a little bit. And if you want to do smaller stuff, and if you're a builder who believes you can sell it and the free market wants to buy the thing you're wanting to build, then you can go do this a little bit easier. So I think overall it's a huge win. And I think that we need to really support this one because it could potentially put hundreds of thousands of units of affordable housing where it needs to go. So I'm a big fan, big proponent.
Yeah, and I'd like to see it be kind of a springboard because it is somewhat, there are some restrictions that were put into it. So it'd be nice if it's a springboard into going even further with it in the future. Assuming it can be successful, I think that will be a blueprint for continuing to, maybe make lot sizes even smaller, like the original
Sure.
proposed bill.
Agreed. Yeah, I still like 1,400 square foot more than 3,000, but the 3,000 is a step in the right direction.
Yep, for sure. All right, well, let's move on to the third and final headline. This one comes to us from Globe Street. Headline reads, CRE loan performance deteriorates, heightening concerns for lenders and investors. So, summary from this article, the past due and non-accrual rate for commercial real estate loans rose to 1.49% in Q1 2025, the highest level in over a decade. Multifamily loans saw an 88 basis point increase over the past year, reaching a PDNA rate of 1.47%. Total loan and lease balances grew by just 0.5% quarter over quarter, signaling weak demand or tighter lending conditions. A breakdown of outstanding loan volumes. So construction and developers, $478.3 billion. Non-farm residential, $1.85 trillion. Multifamily, $638.9 billion. And then non-current loan percentages have elevated. Construction and development, 0.81%. Non-farm, non-residential, 1.36%. and multifamily 1.05%. And then charge-off rates reflect financial strain, construction and development 0.07%, non-farm, non-residential 0.21%, multifamily 0.10%. And then a couple other numbers here. So the bank-owned real estate increases, construction and development $541.7 million, non-farm, non-residential $2.15 billion, and multifamily $160.6 million. So non-farm residential loans rose 1.2% year over year, and unrealized losses on securities dropped to $43.9 billion, down 12.4% from last quarter and 18.8% from last year. And then lastly, only one community bank failed in Q1 2025. The number of FDIC insured banks dropped by 24, down to 4,022, mostly due to mergers. So I know there's not a lot of specific details here in this, Charles, but in general, what is this? I guess, what do you think about this?
None of this seems shocking to me. We know that there's issues in the office sector, and there has been for a number of years. We know that there are some poor performing multifamily deals that are out there that they underwrote rents that were climbing. Those rents have plateaued, or in some cases, Austin, for example, those rents are shrinking, and that creates situations where they're just not solvent. And so there, we know those deals are out there. It's the exception, not the norm, though. And I think that what was interesting to me here is that the bank owned real estate, especially on the multifamily side, is still relatively low. So they're not trying to take stuff back. They're trying to work things out. And that seems to be the overarching theme, is that what we thought could have potentially been a catastrophic type failure has not become that, because most banks have found ways to work it out. Or it's a scenario of you got to bring some equity. Now for investors, for the LP investors in those deals, it's gone pretty badly. So that's a whole different thing. But the banks have been able to work things out, bring in some outside equity. Most of the LP money gets no return. They get some preferred equity in there that takes precedent. Anyway, it's not a good deal for the LPs in the project, but the banks are working it out to where they're not having to take back the deal in most cases. But there still are some poor performing ones, some ones that were bought at the tail end of the cycle that they overpaid for. Those kind of things are still happening, and that's normal at that point in any cycle. I think we expect that to happen a little bit. And office has been an interesting one. There are still some really, really bad office deals. There are office towers that are completely empty that probably aren't going to have tenants. There's some challenges trying to get those redeveloped. We talked about these quite a bit several months ago. So those are still going to be a challenge, although we see a lot of companies bringing people back to work, and in the best performing areas, in the specific markets and submarkets that are live, work, play, and have all the amenities, office is still performing pretty well. But in those downtown core monoculture offices, there are some problems, and that's going to continue. That's going to linger. So I think this probably goes up a little bit more, but I don't think we're looking at any kind of catastrophic failure of the system.
Well, that brings us to the end. Charles, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I was really interested to see this last article. I think that we've kind of been wondering, like, what is going to happen in the marketplace? What's going to happen with the potential of banks getting things back? And it's been much more subdued than what we thought could happen, which is great. We're not ever wanting a catastrophic scenario, but we knew that there were some banks that had a lot of real estate exposure, and it appears that they've found ways to work around that and to avoid what could have been a pretty bad situation. So I don't know if that's a post 2008 thing where they learned lessons, or if there's other things that were extracted. But it seems like the banking system has figured a few of these things out and figured out ways to get through a challenge, which I think is a good lesson. It's a good thing for all of us. I do think the general lending environment, though, is much tighter. So it is harder to get deals done. They're not slinging loans like they were a few years ago. So that part is something that affects most of us that are listening, is that we're all doing different types of real estate deals, and getting funding is much more challenging. So that's just a headwind that we're going to have in the marketplace for a few more years.
And that's consistent with a conversation that we had on a prior episode, specifically around residential loans. But I mean, I think it's consistent across the board and in real
Mm-hmm.
estate in general. All right, guys. Well, that is all we have for this episode. We have a lot of new people tuning in every single week. The numbers show that, and we would really appreciate if you would consider leaving us a rating and review on Apple. As you know, if you're on Apple, leave us a rating and review there. If you're on Spotify, give us a rating over there. Again, it goes a long ways in allowing us to continue to get in front of more people as they're searching out the content. You know, we've been the number one result for the search term land development on Apple or on Spotify, and we're number two on Apple. I'd love to get to number one on Apple. So if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. And with that said, we will talk to you all tomorrow.